The United Galactic Alliance, UGA, prided itself on what it officially termed the Millennium of Organized Peace, which was less an achievement of diplomacy and more a testament to bureaucratic paralysis. With hundreds of super-evolved species forming its ranks, the Alliance had developed an organizational structure so complex that no significant decision had been approved in centuries. Every proposed action drowned in committees, subcommittees, and the infamous preliminary assessment of the potential need for a committee to discuss the possibility of action forms, PP, NCP 7890 Delta, to be submitted in quintuplicate. In this elaborate ecosystem of perfect inaction disguised as governance, the KRYLL had carved out a position of particular distinction. A crystalline insectoid species, they were renowned for their absolute logical thinking, perfect tactical abilities, and adherence to rules down to the most microscopic detail. Their physical forms, humanoid shapes composed of translucent crystalline segments that shifted and pulsated with their thought processes, were as rigid as their thinking. For 12 consecutive cycles, they had been the undefeated champions of the Galactic Strategic Arena, a war simulation championship with a rulebook so dense that it had its own gravitational pull. Tharch Marshal Kthar, Supreme Commander of the KRYLL Strategic Forces, stood before his reflection surface, his crystalline limbs glowing with a cool blue confidence. Today would mark the beginning of the 734th Interspecies Strategic Exercise, an event he had personally helped design. It would be, as the UGA official communication stated, a non-lethal, referee-monitored exercise aimed at enhancing understanding and military cooperation. In reality, it was yet another opportunity for the KRYLL to demonstrate their supreme tactical dominance, especially over lesser species like the troublesome humans of Earth. Speaking of humans, on Earth, at the newly established Department of Space Diplomacy, a glorified closet in the basement of an older, more respected government building, the invitation to the strategic exercise had been lost in a digital pile of spam. It sat there, unnoticed, along with penis enlargement offers, notifications about royal fortunes needing urgent transfer, and warnings about extended spacecraft warranties expiring. Kevin Nguyen, an unpaid intern who mainly joined the department to add something impressive to his resume, was performing his daily task of cleaning out the spam folder when something caught his eye. The poor auto-translation rendered 734th Interspecies Strategic Exercise as 734th Extravagant Extraterrestrial Exhibition. "Hey, MS. Patterson," Kevin called out to his supervisor, who was engrossed in her 15th cup of coffee and a heated argument about who had eaten the last sandwich in the break room. "I think we got invited to some kind of space culture festival." Janice Patterson squinted at the screen and shrugged. "Probably legit. Forward it upstairs and let the higher-ups deal with it." 3 weeks, 17 bureaucratic mix-ups, and one catastrophically misunderstood memo later, Earth had officially accepted the invitation. The government, occupied with what they considered more pressing matters, deciding on the color scheme for the new space diplomacy letterhead, hastily assembled a cultural delegation to showcase Earth's identity. Ambassador Brenda Wilson, a former stand-up comedian appointed to her position due to what the selection committee called remarkable improvisational skills, and what others called knowing the president's golf buddy, found herself in charge of this motley crew. She stood in the hangar of the retrofitted transport ship, now garishly painted with the words, "Earth says hi. We come in peace and bring tasty food," surveying her team with a mixture of bewilderment and resignation. "All right, people," Brenda called out. "Final checklist before departure. Do we have all our cultural items?" The Cosmic Comets, a rock band whose last hit had charted around the same time as the invention of compact discs, raised their instruments. "Ready to rock the universe, Ambassador," shouted their lead guitarist, a 50-something man with a leather jacket that strained against his beer belly. The Street Food Sensations, a group of food truck operators famous for their adventurous cuisines, gestured to their crates of ingredients. "We've got enough to make the galaxy's taste buds explode," said Chef Ramirez, proudly holding up a jar of his apocalypse sauce, a concoction so spicy it came with a liability waiver. The Indie Documentary Filmmakers Association, three bearded men and two women with asymmetrical haircuts, were already filming everything. "This will be our masterpiece," whispered director Samantha Wu reverently to her camera. "We'll call it Humans Among Stars, a journey of discovery, or maybe galactic mingle, the human experience, or possibly Space Brothers." The eccentric scientists contingent, led by Dr. Franklin Wesley, a physicist whose wild hair and wilder theories had made him simultaneously famous and unemployable in conventional research, was busy checking their half-finished experiments. "I'm particularly excited to see how my bubble formula reacts in different gravitational environments," he said, adjusting his mismatched socks. And rounding out the delegation was a mountain of cheap souvenirs. T-shirts with "I Heart Suit Earth" printed on them, plastic snow globes featuring famous Earth landmarks, and thousands of rubber chicken keychains, the mascot of the Cosmic Comets, for reasons no one could remember. "Perfect." Ambassador Brenda clapped her hands. "Our mission is clear. Show the galaxy what humanity is all about. Culture, friendship, and whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at a box labeled Miscellaneous Earthly Wonders, which primarily contained frisbees and glow sticks. As the ship lumbered into orbit, none of its occupants had the slightest inkling that they were headed not to a cultural festival, but to the most prestigious military exercise in the known universe. Nor did they suspect that their complete misunderstanding would shake the foundations of galactic politics forever. The space station's strategic confluence point, Zeta 7, was a marvel of KRYLL military architecture. Every corridor, chamber, and airlock had been designed for maximum efficiency and absolute order. Its gleaming crystalline surfaces reflected the disciplined movements of the various delegation members as they assembled in perfect formation, organized by alphabetical species designation and size. Tharch Marshal Kthar stood at the command platform, his crystalline form glowing with anticipation. All was in perfect order. The Zorblaxians had arrived precisely 3.7 microunits early, acceptable. The Quantuvian Mind Collective had aligned their thought patterns to regulation harmony. Even the notoriously tardy Blyblaxians had managed to synchronize their multiple time perception organs to standard galactic time. Only one delegation was missing, the humans. "Estimated time of human arrival?" Kthar inquired of his adjutant. "They were due 2.3 standard units ago, Tharch Marshal," the adjutant replied, his crystals tinged slightly yellow with concern. Kthar's own crystals pulsed with a momentary flicker of irritation. The humans were classified as a Delta-class species, unpredictable potential, mostly troublesome. Their inclusion in the exercise had been a political necessity, a gesture of inclusivity demanded by the UGA's no sentient left behind policy. He had expected tardiness, but this was... His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent communication. "Unidentified vessel approaching. Non-standard trajectory. Collision risk assessment. High." The massive view screen showed a brightly colored ship performing what could only be described as a drunken wobble through space. It narrowly missed the KRYLL command vessel, scraped against a decorative asteroid, and finally came to a halt by deploying what appeared to be beach anchors. The assembled delegations watched in stunned silence as the docking procedure, typically a ballet of precision, turned into something more akin to parallel parking during a first driving lesson. When the airlock finally opened, a cloud of glitter and paper confetti exploded outward, followed by the amplified sound of electric guitars. Ambassador Brenda Wilson stepped out, waving enthusiastically, her official uniform apparently having been replaced by a T-shirt reading, "Universe's Best Ambassador, probably." "Hello, space friends," her voice boomed through a portable speaker. "Earth has arrived. Let the festival begin." Behind her, the Cosmic Comets launched into their signature song, "Rocket Ride to Your Heart," a power ballad that had briefly charted in 1987. The sound waves physically distorted the crystalline decorations of the reception area. The street food sensations immediately began setting up portable cooking stations, releasing a mixture of aromas that caused the sensitive olfactory organs of several species to retract in self-defense. The documentary crew pushed forward, cameras rolling, accidentally shoving aside a dignitary from the Methane Collective, who released a startled puff of gas that sent 3 smaller delegates floating toward the ceiling. And through it all, Ambassador Brenda moved like a whirlwind of chaotic diplomacy, distributing rubber chicken keychains and attempting to initiate high fives with bewildered aliens. Kthar stood frozen, his crystalline form utterly still as his logical processes attempted to assimilate the scene before him. This was not merely a breach of protocol. This was protocol being taken out back, shot, stuffed, mounted, and displayed as a warning to other protocols. The first scheduled exercise, tactical approach, and target acquisition was set to begin in exactly 7.6 microunits. Kthar signaled his adjutant. They would proceed as planned. Perhaps the humans would observe and learn proper procedure. The exercise arena was a simulated planetary landscape, with various terrain features offering tactical advantages and challenges. The target, a simulated command center at the heart of the arena. The KRYLL team deployed with perfect precision, their crystalline forms shifting into combat configuration. They activated regulation-approved stealth technology and moved in a formation so mathematically perfect it would have brought tears to the eyes of a geometry professor. The Zorblaxians, 8-limbed strategists renowned for their fluid battle movements, oozed into position, their chameleonic skin blending with the surroundings. The Quantuvian Mind Collective projected mental decoys to confuse potential observers. All was proceeding according to the 7,000-page exercise manual. And then the humans arrived. "Hey, this looks like a nice spot for our main stage," Chef Ramirez declared, setting up his portable kitchen directly in front of the target command center. Within minutes, the air was filled with the sizzling sounds and enticing aromas of street food from around Earth. "Dude, awesome acoustics in here," exclaimed the Cosmic Comet sound technician, beginning an ear-splitting sound check that instantly neutralized all stealth technology in a 500-meter radius. The documentary crew, determined to capture authentic alien behavior, ran wildly through carefully planned tactical formations, their boom microphones occasionally smacking unsuspecting delegates in the face or equivalent sensory appendages. Dr. Wesley, having decided this was the perfect opportunity to test his multi-chromatic bubble solution, activated a device that began releasing rainbow-colored, strawberry-scented bubbles that drifted across the battlefield, clinging to stealth suits and causing several high-tech sensors to short-circuit from the sugary residue. And at the center of it all was Ambassador Brenda, who had somehow found a KRYLL battle robot and was attempting to befriend it by placing a party hat on its sensor array. "Come on, don't be shy," she cajoled the confused machine. "Every party needs a dancing robot." The monitoring station, where Kthar and other delegation leaders observed the exercise, was in chaos. The tactical displays, showing carefully planned troop movements, now resembled a child's finger painting, with orderly formations broken by random human-shaped blips moving in patterns that defied all strategic logic. "What is their strategy?" demanded a Zorblaxian commander, their voice bubbling with confusion. Kthar's crystals were vibrating at an unusual frequency. "I cannot determine," he admitted, the words feeling like a betrayal of his entire existence. On the main view screen, they watched as aliens from various delegations, overcome by curiosity, began abandoning their positions to investigate the human encampment. Some are already lined up at Chef Ramirez's food stand, while others cautiously approached the band, seemingly mesmerized by what they were calling organized sonic warfare. The exercise timer expired. According to the sensors, the target area had been captured, not by any of the tactical teams, but by an impromptu gathering of off-duty delegates enjoying Earth tacos and attempting to dance to Stairway to Heaven. Kthar stared at the results, his logical processes experiencing what humans might call a blue screen of death. The adjutant, sensing his superior's distress, quietly suggested, "Perhaps we should proceed to the next exercise?" The second day of the exercise dawned with an atmosphere of tension among the non-human delegates. Emergency meetings had been held throughout the night cycle. Tactical analyses had been attempted. The Quantivia Mind Collective had even tried to psychically probe the humans during their sleep, only to retreat in horror from dreams involving giant talking food items and something called Netflix and chill. The second exercise, strategic defense and counterattack, was about to begin. The humans had been assigned a base to defend, actually their logistics area, filled with musical equipment and cooking supplies. The other delegations would attempt to capture it using approved simulation weapons. Thar had personally selected his elite crystalline shock troops for this mission. This time, there would be order. This time, logic would prevail. As the exercise began, the humans implemented their defensive strategy. They organized a free outdoor concert for galactic peace directly in front of their base. The Cosmic Comets, now augmented by several alien musicians who had volunteered during the night, including, to Kthar's horror, 3 junior KRYLL officers, were performing what they called a space jam session. Dr. Wesley's team of eccentric scientists had accidentally activated an experiment creating rainbow-colored bubble clouds with strawberry scent, covering part of the exercise area and rendering many sensors useless. The street food sensations had launched a fastest foe eating contest in the galaxy, attracting attention from both attacking forces and other delegates who were supposed to be observing only. Ambassador Brenda had somehow acquired a megaphone and was conducting tours of the human base, inviting potential attackers to come see how Earthlings chill and distributing more of those ubiquitous rubber chicken keychains. Kthar's elite unit, designed to penetrate any defense with surgical precision, found themselves unable to even approach the human base. The crowd of spectators, including delegates from other teams and even several curious KRYLL junior officers, created an impenetrable barrier of bodies. Those who managed to push through then encountered the bubble clouds, which not only obscured vision, but also caused several sensitive equipment modules to short-circuit after coming into contact with the sugary liquid. Commander Krilks, leader of the KRYLL strike team, attempted to order the crowd to disperse according to Regulation 739, B.45 of the exercise manual. His authoritative crystalline form pushed through the crowd, only to be spotted by Ambassador Brenda. "Oh my gosh, look everyone! It's Mr. Sparkles," she exclaimed, grabbing the horrified commander and pulling him onto the makeshift stage. "Say a few words about friendship among the stars, would you, buddy?" Krilks, the veteran of 17 actual space conflicts and holder of the crystal of unyielding logic, found himself stuttering into a microphone before hundreds of spectators. His crystals turned a mortified pink, and he eventually fled the stage to the sound of good-natured laughter. The situation worsened when several soldiers from the Glargan species, skin-breathing entities highly sensitive to spices, decided to sample one of the human food items, an extra spicy kimchi. The result was immediate, mass allergic reactions among the Glargan troops, with their skin rapidly cycling through colors and emitting strange whistling sounds. This triggered an emergency medical evacuation that disrupted the entire exercise. Humans attempting to help offered the suffering Glargans more kimchi, insisting that eating more will help you get used to it. By the time the exercise timer expired, not a single attack team had managed to come within 50 meters of the human base. The official record would later describe the outcome as inconclusive due to environmental factors, the most diplomatic phrasing the scribes could devise. In his private quarters, Kthar called an emergency meeting with his senior commanders. The crystalline officers arranged themselves in perfect geometric formation, their forms glowing with increasing distress. "Analysis," Kthar ordered. Commander Krilks, still slightly pink around the edges from his stage experience, spoke first. "Their tactics defy all logical explanation, Tharch Marshal. They appear to be utilizing a form of chaotic psychological warfare so advanced that it presents as complete strategic incompetence." Another officer added, "Our scouts report even more concerning observations. During what they call off hours, the humans engage in ritualistic activities that make no strategic sense. One involves staring at images of small Earth animals and making high-pitched sounds of appreciation. Another involves voluntary intoxication followed by loud vocalization into amplification devices. They call this karaoke. Strategic purpose, unknown. Kthar's crystals pulsated with deep thought. Could it be? Could it be that they are so advanced that they have transcended conventional strategic thinking? That what appears as chaos to us is actually a higher form of order? The assembled officers' crystals flickered in the KRYLL equivalent of uncomfortable silence. Or, added a junior analyst cautiously, they might just be idiots who have no idea what they're doing. Kthar dismissed this suggestion with a wave of his crystalline appendage. Impossible. No species could achieve interstellar travel and be that oblivious. As the day of the final exercise dawned, the entire space station was in a state of barely controlled pandemonium. The humans had somehow convinced the station's environmental controls that Earth's party atmosphere was optimal for all species, resulting in disco lights in the corridors and what they called elevator music in all common areas. The final exercise, Crisis Negotiation and Conflict Resolution Simulation, was the most prestigious event of the gathering. The scenario, a diplomatic crisis between two fictional alliances with a threat of full-scale war. Human delegation had been assigned as the neutral mediating party. In the simulation chamber, representatives from various species sat in rigid diplomatic formation. The two opposing factions were beginning their carefully scripted positions, citing complex logical arguments and references to galactic law. Ambassador Brenda arrived 15 minutes late, carrying what appeared to be a tea tray. Sorry for the delay, folks. Just thought we could all use a little relaxation before diving into this heavy stuff. Who wants cookies and tea? Chef Ramirez made them special. They're gluten-free for our silicon-based friends. The diplomatic representatives stared in bewilderment as Brenda set up a friendly tea party in the middle of what was supposed to be a tense negotiation. She distributed cookies, tea in mismatched cups, and constructive joke art designed to break the ice. Now, I notice everyone's all tense and formal, Brenda observed, munching on a cookie. In my experience, the best way to resolve conflicts is to remember we're all just people, or, sentient beings with feelings and hopes and dreams. So why don't we try a little Earth team-building exercise? While the diplomats were attempting to argue complex logical points and cite galactic law, Brenda introduced a human team-building game, Tug of War. It's simple, she explained, producing a length of rope from her apparently bottomless bag of Earth oddities. Two teams pull on opposite ends of this rope. Whoever pulls the other team over this line wins. It's a metaphor for negotiation, you see. Sometimes you pull, sometimes you give a little. The diplomats initially refused, citing various regulations and dignity protocols. But after Brenda's enthusiastic encouragement and some not-so-subtle implication that refusing would mark them as weaklings, they reluctantly agreed. What followed was something unprecedented in the history of galactic diplomacy. Senior representatives from ancient, dignified species, many of whom had not engaged in physical activity for centuries, found themselves grunting and straining over a rope. Their aides watched in shock as beings who normally communicated through formal subspace protocols and 12 layers of translators were now shouting things like "pull harder" and "don't let those tentacle faces win." When one side finally won, instead of resentment, there was laughter and handshakes or tentacle clasps or telepathic equivalents of high fives. "See," Brenda declared triumphantly, her face flushed with exertion from having joined the losing side. Sometimes the best way to resolve a conflict is to pull on a rope together and realize that we're all stronger when we cooperate, or at least that we'll have a good time trying. The rubber chicken incident occurred during the tense negotiation before the tug of war. The band's rubber chicken mascot had somehow fallen into the central control panel of the simulation system, causing a short circuit. The simulation system announced, conflict resolved. Cause, undefined system error. Conclusion, unexpected peace. Kthar, who had been observing the proceedings, felt a strange sensation spreading through his crystalline form. Watching the entire spectacle, from cookie diplomacy to the rubber chicken solution, he finally understood. Humans weren't master strategists using chaos. They were genuinely chaotic. And that very chaos, that complete ignorance of the rules and breathtaking naivete, was their most powerful weapon. His logic centers collapsed entirely. The crystals on his body stopped vibrating and slowly shifted to a pale pink color, a shade never before recorded in the KRYLL emotional spectrum, later translated by linguists as cosmic bewilderment and acceptance. The official results of the exercise were hastily compiled by the UGA bureaucracy in a desperate attempt to salvage the situation and conceal the truth that the exercise had devolved into a circus. They declared the human delegation as special honorary winners for their unique and creative contributions to peace and interspecies understanding. Ambassador Brenda received a medal for constructive silliness, a name secretly coined by a group of referees with a sense of humor. The human delegation returned to Earth, believing they had enjoyed an extremely successful, if somewhat strange, cultural exchange. The band even secured a small recording contract with a Zorgan record label, who appreciated structured chaotic sounds. Tharch Marshal Kthar resigned his position, dedicating the rest of his life to researching applied chaos theory in interspecies relations and writing a best-selling book titled Rubber Chickens and the Collapse of Military Logic. The UGA established a new subcommittee, the Subcommittee for Research and Countermeasures Against Human Phenomena, with an enormous budget but no clear results after many years. The Strategic Exercise Rulebook was supplemented with a thick appendix, special rules applicable when Delta-class species, humans, are present, mostly, containing advice like don't try to understand them, bring headache medication, and always prepare for the most unexpected thing, then multiply it by 1,000. Humans, still completely unaware of their true victory or the horror they had unleashed, continued to explore the universe in their own way, organizing music festivals on barren moons, opening interplanetary fast food chains, and inadvertently resolving ancient conflicts through unintentional acts of foolishness. Other species began to develop a strange respect and fear for humans. Some even secretly sent anthropologists to Earth to try to understand their secret, but they usually returned with more questions than answers. As a Xylosian philosopher concluded in what became a famous galactic bestseller, perhaps, in a universe governed by logic and order, the greatest threat, or perhaps the greatest savior, is a completely illogical factor, an incalculable variable. And that factor, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary sentients, is humanity. They win wars without even trying, because they aren't even playing the same game. They're playing their own game, and somehow, the universe adjusts accordingly. Among the crystal gardens of the KRYLL homeworld, Kthar's memoir became required reading for all tactical officers. His final words in the epilogue became the stuff of legend. Logic can predict the actions of logical beings. But in the face of absolute chaos, in the face of humanity, perhaps the only logical response is to embrace the illogical, or, at the very least, to learn to dance. And somewhere in the vast archives of the UGA, filed under miscellaneous cultural artifacts of historical significance, sits a lone rubber chicken. Attached to it is a simple tag that reads, "The Instrument of Galactic Peace. Handle with care."